Okay, shut up, you guys. I want to talk to you about Studio Ghibli. Okay, now I can take this thing off. Oh my gosh, that feels good. Okay. What were we talking about? Sorry if there's background noise. I'm keeping all my windows open. I do not give a single. So, for those of you that have been living under a rock, hopefully in a picturesque meadow somewhere, snacking on some bread and cheese that a small child has left you as an offering, Studio Ghibli is a Japanese animation studio that was founded in the 80s and is known for family entertainment with a whimsical art style and themes of fantasy and wonder. Now, I love a magical world that fills you with childlike joy. I know I'm very brave for saying it. I love all the little creatures that populate his world. I love the beautiful locations that range from traditional Japanese and European architecture to steampunk to sprawling natural landscapes, but all with a certain dreamlike pizzazz to them. But if you've watched any of my videos, you know I also like a tight, cohesive narrative. I like analyzing the plot of media to see if it holds up better or worse when you think about it the next day. And that's just not what Ghibli is about. Ghibli is about the vibes. For a lot of these movies, you can't even really discuss the plot holes because there's not a traditional plot. It's just holes all the way down. I'll pause here so you can insert whatever jokes about holes that you'd like. In every Ghibli film, I can find a great deal to like and also a lot not to like. So I thought I'd slowly make my way through every Ghibli movie, by which I mean every feature-length animated film in their catalog, and identify what, in my opinion, is the best and worst thing about each film. Will I get to the end before I lose myself in whimsy and run off to be a shepherd/witch in a field somewhere? Who knows? Starting off, perhaps not super strong, with Earwig and the Witch. Earwig is about a girl from an orphanage who gets adopted/held captive by a witch and her weird demon boyfriend, boss, ex-bandmate. I'm not really sure who he's supposed to be, but I do know in my heart of heart that he would be played by David Tennant in a live-action remake. It's a very strange movie even for Ghibli, and it mostly takes place in the witch's house, so you're not even getting the typical sweeping landscapes and various adventure set pieces that you usually do. The worst thing about it, though, is the strange relationship between the witch, Baba Yaga, and Earwig, and how it develops throughout. There is this weird character archetype that permeates through a lot of Ghibli films, and that is the older woman, usually magical, who does truly terrible things, but by the end of the film, everyone just kind of acts like they're your rude but lovable grandma. Like, yeah, she says some kind of racist things about the neighbors sometimes, but she's been through a lot and she's really not that bad. Except in the case of these characters, yes, she is. You see this character in Howl's Moving Castle and Spirited Away, but I think Baba Yaga is the worst example, probably because she does legally adopt Earwig, so it's not like this motherly role is something that's been thrust upon her unexpectedly. She traps Earwig in the house, treats her terribly, and threatens her with physical violence. Meanwhile, she seems to be in an emotionally abusive relationship with David Tennant, who she's deathly afraid of, and warns Earwig to never piss off. But then at the end of the movie, when Earwig gets the upper hand, she doesn't use it to escape the situation. Instead, she just kind of changes the dynamic to make them a more happy, traditional family. The last scene in the movie is them having a really nice Christmas together with Earwig's friend, and in the ending credits, we get images of them going to the beach. I think the best part about this movie is anything to do with the band backstory. Because, of course, Baba Yaga and David Tennant used to be in a band with Earwig's mom. The music we actually hear from the band in the flashbacks kind of slaps. The vocals are done by Casey Musgraves in the English version, and I just kind of wish the whole movie was actually about these weird magical people traveling in a band together, how they met, how they fell apart. The ending Christmas scene ends with Earwig's mom suddenly appearing, and you think, oh great, maybe we're gonna get more band stuff. Mother-daughter reunion, be damned, I want a big musical finale number. But then the movie ends, so it feels like the best parts of this movie are actually what happened before and after the action we actually get to see. Other notes about the film: I actually don't hate that Studio Ghibli decided to make a CGI movie. I know a lot of people were nervous that it was going to be the permanent future of Ghibli, and I'm glad it's not that, but I do feel like a lot of directors and studios try really forcefully to hang on to the stylistic elements of what made them popular, while not working as hard to preserve the spirit of the stories that they make. And I didn't say Tim Burton, you said Tim Burton. Who is that? I don't know her. I'm happy that Studio Ghibli felt free to experiment and try something new. Even if it wasn't popular this time around, it shows they're still open to innovation. Fluctuating wildly in terms of both release date and critical reception, I want to talk about My Neighbor Totoro. Is a film about two sisters who move with their father to a house near the forest to be closer to their mother's hospital where she's in treatment, where they soon discover a bunch of forest spirits, including the large and friendly Totoro. The best thing about this movie, Totoro! I know that seems like a cop-out because he's obviously the main draw of the film and he has even become the mascot for Studio Ghibli, but there is actually a lot in this film that doesn't involve Totoro, and it's all very sweet and well-crafted, but it's not Totoro. As I said, I love cute little creatures, be they real or fictional, but I have never felt such visceral longing to hug something as I have with Totoro. The younger sister Mei meets Totoro and immediately falls asleep on him. You might think that's a strange course of action for a child who has just been introduced to a magical world of spirits, but it feels correct. I feel like I would have the exact same instinct. It was probably the best nap of her life. I think a nap on Snorlax would be pretty good too, but Snorlax always looks just a little bit grimy. Like, not terrible, but he'll fall asleep anywhere. On the street, in a patch of mud. Totoro has definitely studied every shady spot in the glade to select the optimal nap spot for comfort and retaining the color and texture of his soft fur. I'm not an ASMR girly, but when Totoro's in the rain with his umbrella and he's just kind of vibing with the sound of the raindrops, I feel like he's experiencing the benefits of ASMR, and as a result, as a viewer, you kind of get it too. Just every time he's on screen, he finds a new way to make you feel completely relaxed and at peace. And I live in Toronto, so I need that. The worst part about this film? Not enough Totoro. I know, like, that also feels like a cop-out, but as I said, there's lots of this movie where Totoro isn't involved at all, and some of that feels correct, like there's a divide between the magical forest world where Totoro lives and, for example, the school or the hospital, but there are some points where Totoro should for sure be there and he's just not. At the end of the film, Mei runs away and everyone in the village is committed to finding her. Her sister Satsuki's running her little heart out, literally till her feet bleed, and all the while I'm thinking, you're friends with a magical forest spirit. Go find the forest spirit. Maybe, just maybe, he has some magical forest spirit powers that could help you. And finally, she thinks to go find Totoro and ask for his help, and Totoro's just like, for sure, let me call you an Uber. And he summons his friend the cat bus and sends Satsuki off on that. And don't get me wrong, cat bus is also excellent, but This is the climax of the film. Shouldn't Totoro of My Neighbor Totoro be there in the moment where the sisters are reunited? Couldn't he at least get on Cat Bus with her? Additional notes. I like that the sick mother neither makes a miraculous recovery or dies for the plot. I think that's a good message for kids, that things like illness are a part of the world, but that doesn't mean that the worst is always going to happen. I also really like the little boy who clearly has a crush on Suzuki, but he doesn't understand his feelings, so he just gets really mad about it, but not in a toxic way where he's pulling on her pigtails and just being mean because he likes her. He's behaving like a perfect little gentleman, but perpetually scowling at this girl for having the nerve to make him want to do nice things for her. It's very relatable. Next up is Howl's Moving Castle. I know this one is a favorite for a lot of people. It's not one that I would personally reach for again and again. First of all, because this one is very high on vibes, low on plot, and second of all, I live with a witch who wears a lot of flowy blouses and has very passionate opinions about his hair, so I think a lot of the charm of Howl is a little lost on me. But the world is incredibly imaginative and there are little creatures for days, so I do get the appeal. Best thing about this movie is the stairs scene. If someone did ask me to rewatch Howl's Moving Castle with them, I'd probably say we can watch all of that movie once if we can watch the stair scene twice. Basically, our main character, Sophie, has been turned into an old woman by a witch for no good reason. And yes, she will later take in said witch and treat her as her rude but lovable grandma. But first, they encounter each other at this huge staircase they both have to get up. So it's just 5 minutes of these two elderly women struggling to climb stairs, but with the added tension of one of them having turned the other into an elderly woman. And Sophie's just super passive-aggressive about it. Like, you'd think that instead of stealing her youth and a good 3/4 of her life, this woman stole her tuna casserole recipe. And on the other side, you'd think a witch with this power would have a contingency plan for getting upstairs, but nope, she's just getting her steps in the good old-fashioned way. And there's also a little adorable but useless dog. It's very good. The worst thing about this movie is that when Sophie gets turned into an elderly woman, she goes from being a shy, passive young woman to a very assertive, clever character. But then when she starts to Benjamin Button back into her old self because of the power of love or whatever, she goes back to being simpering, overly timid, a little bitch. It just feels like her character regresses with her age, and I don't understand why, since she's lived through the same experiences, except that they didn't know how to write a romantic female lead that doesn't just naturally sigh when she speaks. I did not read Howl's Moving Castle, the novel, but luckily my roommate did, and he likes recounting the plot of books he reads with such detail that you'd think we were living in Fahrenheit 451, and if he doesn't share his knowledge, all the copies will be burned and the stories will be lost forever. And he mentioned that there are 2 changes that stuck out for him from the film. The first is that in the book, Howl is like that because he's from Wales. The second is that when Sophie becomes a young woman again, she and Howl retain the bickering but loving relationship that they've developed from the beginning of the story, and I really would have liked to see that retained for the film. Tell that ridiculous wizard what's up, Sophie. Other notable things. Soundtrack, slaps, cast, iconic, Billy Crystal as a little ball of fire that makes your breakfast. Can't beat it. Next up, we have Castle in the Sky. This movie has everything. Sky pirates, shrimp robots, burly men that intimidate each other by ripping their shirt off with their pec muscles. Did I say shrimp robots? It's also got a classic, cohesive, but not overly simplistic fantasy plot, while maintaining strong aesthetic vibes and themes of environmentalism. Also allegedly partially inspired by Miyazaki's trip to Wales right after the coal miners' strike. Wales is so important, you guys. So while watching this movie, I thought I might struggle to find something distinct that I didn't like. By the midway point, I thought maybe they would gloss over why no one had discovered this floating secret city when their entire society seems to revolve around flying machines. Like, everyone gets an airplane, or a hovercraft, or an airship. They even mention that automobiles are increasingly rare. But by the third act, they establish there's actually a system of wind currents and storms that make it almost impossible to catch more than a glimpse of the city unless you have the magical crystal. So, touche, Miyazaki. I'll admit that is a bit more sophisticated than Deus Ex Catbus. But don't worry, they left me one pretty strong contender for the worst thing in that movie, and that would be a ship full of grown men falling in love with a child. When the main characters, Patsu and Shida, join the Sky Pirates to get to the hidden city of Laputa, it's basically outright said that most of the pirates have a big old crush on Shida, who is 13. I know there's a history of age dynamics being kind of dicey in some anime, but this is not a situation where she is animated to look older than she is or treated like an adult despite her age. That's a full child, and when they're searching for her early in the film, they even say, "We're looking for a girl. Oh, she's probably about the age of those kids over there." And then that one guy busts his shirt open with his pec muscles. So they might be childlike in personality, but visually it's very, very clear that they're adults and she is a child. Later in the film, they get arrested for piracy and we're supposed to be like, oh no, but I'm low-key like they should probably be arrested. Not for piracy, but jail. The best thing about this film is that they actually get rude but lovable grandma right. Dola, the leader of the pirates, is the perfect mix of self-centered and crass, but protective of the children she finds herself responsible for. Except for letting her grown-ass sons interact with Shida, that's an L. But in general, she's the matriarch who will never admit that she cares about those around her, but does immensely. Although maybe not as much as Treasure, because she's a pirate. Oh, and her fits are iconic. Did I say that right? I'm a millennial. The fits, they're iconic. Other notes about the film, did I mention shrimp robots? So I think that completes part 1 of my Ghibli quest. 4 down and only so many left. Please pray for me. Please like and subscribe and let me know what Ghibli films I should do next. And as always, have a delicious day.